Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to another day of revival from the Bible. And here I'm looking at a book of our wedding photos, right? I mean, look at these two lovebirds. I know you're looking at this and you're saying, wow, they look so young. And you're thinking, but wait, they still look so young. Well, maybe not as young as we used to, but this was such a special day. And it was special, for many, many reasons. But one of the things that was most important, I don't know if you can see some of these pictures from the actual service, right, was because we made promises to one another. My wife and I, we had the traditional vows for richer, for poorer, for better, for worse. We wrote vows to each other to make promises that we were going to love each other for the rest of our lives, and that we were going to seek to honor Christ in all that we did. And I mean, on a human level, those are the most precious promises that I've ever made or that I have ever heard. But I want us to think today that there are promises that are even greater than that, right? Because they're not coming. My wife is the most important person alive on planet Earth right now, but there is someone still even more important than my wife. If you're married, right, there's someone more important than your spouse, and that is God. He is our creator. He is the king. He is in charge, and he has made promises to us. And one thing, we've all seen promises relating to marriage, unfortunately, be broken, right? The record is not perfect in our society. But when we look at God and we look at his record of keeping promises, what we see is perfection. And I want you to notice that today from our reading from the book of Joshua. Now, I have tried to warn you that you get to the end of the book of Joshua and you start thinking, oh, there's these long lists about all these tribes and their cities, and you're going to start to fall asleep. And I've said, stop it. Don't do that. Don't fall asleep, because if you do, you're going to miss amazing things. And there's one amazing thing that happens at the end of chapter 21. I guess it's not so much a thing that happens, just as a couple verses of commentary. Let's start at the end of Joshua 21, verse 43, where at this point, you're reading all the cities of the Levites, and you're like, okay, let's just skip ahead to the New Testament, right? Wrong. Don't do that. Starting in verse 43, thus the Lord gave to Israel all the land that he swore to give to their fathers. And they took possession of it, and they settled there. And the Lord gave them rest on every side, just as he had sworn to their fathers. Not one of all their enemies had withstood them, for the Lord had given all their enemies into their hands. Not one word of all the good promises that the Lord had made to the house of Israel had failed. All came to pass, right? What an amazing statement. A few times in there, it refers to the promises that God had made to their fathers, the promises that God had made to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, or even more recently to Moses. And he refers to all these things. Not one word of all the good promises that the Lord had made to the house of Israel had failed. All came to pass. God always keeps his promises. That was true toward the nation of Israel in these early days of the Exodus and the conquest, and that is true to this day. That is true for you. So today I want you to think about the promises of God, because we have this reminder that, hey, God, he kept his promises to the people of Israel. I want you thinking, God is going to keep his promises to me. And the one step further that I would like you to take is, what are those promises? Because someday the book of your life is going to be written. Maybe not literally, but someday it's going to be said of you that not one word of all the good promises that God had made to you has failed. He keeps his promises. So I'd encourage you, spend some time thinking, what are the promises in Scripture that are precious to you? I spent a little time doing that myself, and even just a few that I wrote down. One of my favorite promises in the Bible from Hebrews 13:5, where God says, I will never leave you or forsake you. And clearly that's applied to all of God's people, to believers. He will never leave you or forsake you. What an amazing promise. Another favorite verse of mine, surely goodness and mercy will follow me all the days of my life. From Psalm 23:6. Man, that's something I can hold on to. Surely goodness and mercy are going to follow me all the days of my life. Or one that we're going to get to shortly as if you're wondering, we're just hitting the pause button on the Gospel of John. We're going to get back to it. By no means are we leaving the Gospel of John. We've still got, 17 chapters, 16, 17. We've got to finish up 4 and then a lot more chapters left. We're going to get back to that, but during this weird coronavirus thing, I wanted to just pause briefly for a series from Romans 8, but we're about to get to Romans 8:28, that all things work together for good for those who love God. I mean, that's just a beginning, but those are promises that I want to be thinking about today. What are the promises that you are going to think about more today? Right? We also get started today in Romans chapter 11. We continue in Mark chapter 3. But I want to just set the scene a little bit for us as we start Psalm 50 this week. We'll be reading that over the next 3 days. And just to remember that God is a judge. And this is a very interesting psalm highlighting God's role as judge. We're going to get later to where he talks about what he wants. And he's even going to say, because I haven't done anything, you thought that I was like you. And God makes clear he is not like us. He is holy and he is just and he will punish sin, right? So just a couple verses from that today. Psalm 50, the mighty one, God the Lord, speaks and summons the earth from the rising of the sun to its setting. Out of Zion, the perfection of beauty, God shines forth. Our God comes. He does not keep silence. Before him is a devouring fire, around him a mighty tempest. He calls to the heavens above and to the earth that he may judge his people. Gather to me my faithful ones who made a covenant with me by sacrifice. The Lord declares his righteousness, for God himself is judge, right? Even if you think about worship songs, there's not enough that highlight God's role as judge and even the attribute of the justice of God. But we're going to see more of that this week as we read through this psalm, and I hope that encourages you. But before you leave today, what I want to encourage you with is once this video is over, I don't know if you write things down in a journal like I do or write things on a note card, what are some of the promises of God that you are going to hold on to today as you remember that not one word of any promise of God to the people of Israel, to you, none of it is going to fail. And we can thank God for that. So have a great Tuesday, and we will see you tomorrow again, Lord willing, on Revival from the Bible.